A report shows more South Africans are indeed living below the breadline. The National Statistics Body reveals that the proportion of the population who are deemed to be living in poverty has now jumped from 45.5% to 53.8%. Well, 5 years ago, it cost an average South African 321 rand per month to buy food with the correct energy requirements. This has now increased to 355 rand in 2014. Well, Kate Hamilton is with FoodBank South Africa, and she's on the line now. Good afternoon, Kate, and thank you for your time on the PM News Desk.
Hi, Thursday. Thanks for having me.
What is a poverty line, Kate, and what does it measure?
Well, really, what the poverty line does is give an indication of the poverty situation in South Africa. And that can be broken down into three main groups. The food poverty line refers to people who can't afford to cover their basic food requirements on a day-to-day basis. So that means that they can potentially cover the cost of providing themselves with 1,200 calories a day, but the requirement is more like 2,100. So there's a shortfall. Then there's also the lower bound poverty line, which means that people can afford to cover their food costs, but not their non-food essentials. So ultimately what happens there is because people need they need to cover transport costs, then ultimately food is the thing that's sacrificed. And then also there's the upper bound poverty line, which refers to people who can cover their food costs and their non-food essentials, but they're still impoverished. So that's the number you're referring to, which is approximately 53.8%.
Yes, Kate. How will the recalculation of this poverty line from 620 rand a month to 779 rand a month now impact on households we know are already under strain?
Well, it won't have a direct impact on the households under strain, but what it does do is give a more realistic indication of the situation in South Africa. So people were under the impression that things are slightly better, but it seems that the case is more that things are the same or slightly worse than they were 5 years ago because of things like inflation and rising petrol costs, which have now decreased, and then, of course, electricity costs going up.
All right, in a country like ours, we should not have people dying of hunger or not sure where their next meal will come from. Yet that's exactly what is happening. Why is that?
Well, the main cause of that is people can't afford food. So that would be due to unemployment or households which are headed by grandparents or households that are too large for the amount of income coming in. And then also factors that I mentioned before, like increase in electricity costs. All of that has an impact on the price of food and ultimately the amount of food that people can buy and provide for their families.
All right.
That obviously has an impact on hunger.
All right. If one looks at Johannesburg, for example, it's one of the richest or the richest city on the African continent. The food poverty line is sitting at about 339 rand. But despite its wealth, we still have communities on the periphery of our city going hungry. Tell us what it means to be food insecure, Kate.
Well, food insecure refers to people who can't provide for their nutrition requirements. So that's either someone who doesn't have access to enough food when they need it, or they don't have access to the right kinds of food. So, for example, if a person is living off a diet of maize or bread, that doesn't constitute food secure because that's not a well-rounded meal. And the reason that a city like Johannesburg has so many people vulnerable to food insecurity is because, as we know, the wealth is not spread evenly. So there is a huge percentage of the population who are really struggling to buy enough food.
Kate Hamilton is with FoodBank South Africa. Thank you for your time on the PM News Desk. Moving on to other